Welcome to History Happened Everywhere.
The Verdict.
This is our review episode where we look back at last week's efforts. That's episode 15, Kiribati. So if you haven't heard that, do go back and have a listen. If you're not going to do that, then just be prepared. There will be spoilers ahead.
You're much nicer and less forceful.
Hello and welcome to History Happened Everywhere, The Verdict. I'm Peter and this is Ryan.
Hello.
We're here with our friend, mentor and hard taskmaster, Mr. Paul Dersley.
Not so hard.
Well, we'll see about that. We'll see in the coming minutes.
Hey Paul, how you doing?
I'm not too bad. Not too bad. Looking forward to a new year.
I don't know what I'm going to do the day that you turn around and go, I'm really happy.
No, that's never going to happen.
Fair point. We're approaching Christmas, Paul. You getting Christmassy?
No.
You got your tree up?
No.
Have you been caroling?
I feel like you take a sort of Scrooge before approach and don't really go through the events of the night. You stick with the humbug.
Well, I've lived in my place for sort of almost 30 years now, and I've never had Christmas decorations.
I think the Christmas decorations are in his heart all along.
No, they're not. They're just a load of plastic. And we're supposed to be cutting plastic waste.
We are supposed to be cutting plastic waste. All that plastic is rolling up on the Kiribati shores.
Oh, beautiful segue, right?
Thanks, man. I was reading about that this week. The people of Kiribati are using the plastic that's floating up on shore and weaving it into clothing and things, making little hats and t-shirts and stuff with the plastic thread woven into it. It looks really pretty, little flowers and things.
Something good coming out of something quite grim.
Yeah.
Nice.
But a nice segue, nonetheless,
Very much
into
so.
this week's podcast.
Kiribati. So would you have pronounced it right, Paul? Because we got it hopelessly wrong.
I would have got it right, yes, because can't you remember the millennium? It was all over the television.
Well, it's funny because the minute that Pete started talking about the time zone thing and we worked out that it was the first place, the millennium suddenly struck a chord with me. But it was a long time ago, 20 years ago almost.
I think John Simpson was given a sort of an easy one there because I think he was sent to Christmas Island to be one of the first people to see it.
I wonder how many people went to the wrong Christmas Island for that event.
Yes, I was going to say that because I just wondered whether you knew that there were two Christmas islands, one in the Indian Ocean and one in the Pacific.
Let's pretend that, one of us didn't know that. Is it quite famous, the other?
No, I actually forgot because I was looking for some flights to Christmas Island today. And the initial one it put to the other one, I was sort of thinking, why do I want to go via Perth?
Oh, I see. Right. You're looking at getting going away?
No, it's just I've been to the Pacific a couple of times and sort of listening to Pete's travelogue piqued my interest yet again.
Oh, well, that bodes well for you, Pete.
It does. I'm excited about the exciting and extremely good grade I can expect as a result of having turned Paul into Phileas Fogg again.
With his little pith helmet on.
I almost bought a pith helmet once, but it was too expensive.
To wear or just for decoration around the house?
Well, both.
Okay. Would you really wear a pith helmet, though?
Probably.
I mean, it's a helmet, isn't it? Like, it's supposed to protect you from what?
The heat. And stray tree branches.
Okay.
No, it protects your eyes from the pith in a citrus fruit, doesn't it?
You've just made that up. You made that up. You totally made that up. They look like those old bobby hats, don't they? Policemen.
Yeah, they've got that sort of conical cone head look about them.
It's better than a fish.
Puffer fish or pith helmet? That's the decision you have to make.
I think I know what I go for.
Any other fish you would wear as a hat or a headpiece?
Oh, just trying to think. Is there a fish that people wear on their head? No, it's sort of mainly birds' feathers, aren't they? So
Surely your milliner could whip you up a cod cap or something.
A cod piece, possibly.
Yeah. Let's talk first about time zones.
Yes.
Right. So, time zones wise, did anything strike you as interesting about the podcast that stuck out, or is there any facts that you've got about time zones in general?
Well, the interesting thing is what Pete was saying about they unilaterally decided to move the time zone in 1995. The interesting thing is, of course, they should really have moved it the other way, because most of the land is on the the eastern side of the line, so they should have put the line to the west. But of course, with the millennium coming up, that would be rather silly. You wouldn't want to make yourself the last country on Earth to get it, would you? You'd want to make yourself the first country on Earth. But I don't really think that that's right.
So what surprised me was that they could just do it. I always figured there'd be some international body that went, this is what time zones are, and we all agree. The fact that they did it on their own, I thought was, I guess it makes sense. Time is your own in your country, but it felt like something that should have a broader impact on people, and I feel like you should get someone to approve your decision, don't you? But
you wonder when the country was set up why they didn't split it into two island groups, one each side of the line.
But who's in charge of time?
Doctor Who.
I suppose technically Greenwich is, but it's it's either Greenwich or Paris.
Hang on, what claim have Paris got on time? I see Greenwich. They've got the 0 line. They've got the little line that, as we discussed, would be a pain in the bum to move.
Well, it took Paris many years to actually agree to that, even though they used it from, was it 1884, I think, when it was agreed. But they wouldn't call it GMT. They called it something like Paris +4.
Paris +4. Catchy.
And so, yes, I've flown over the Dateline a couple of times.
It took me I have to be honest, it was a thing that I knew existed kind of in the back of my mind, but I hadn't really figured out why it worked until I had to explain it to Ryan fundamentally.
Yeah.
And it does make sense, but it takes some getting your head around, doesn't it? The sort of sudden change of a day.
Yes, you just have this arbitrary point on Earth where you lose a day or gain a day, which was quite fun because I deliberately decided to go to the lavatory just before the plane flew over the international dateline, so I could say I was in the lavatory for a whole day.
There is another way to do that, Paul, but it's probably not bode well for your mental health.
So when you were on the plane, they celebrated the fact that you went over the timeline?
Well, it's like when you cross the equator, isn't it? They say, oh, we've just crossed the equator, or we've just crossed the international dateline. And you sort of get nowadays, you get the countdown things, don't you?
I like the blasé way that you say that. It's like when you cross the equator, Ryan. I don't know how many times. You must do that several times a week.
I don't know if I've ever crossed the equator. Maybe I am. Where does the equator lie?
Around the middle.
Yeah, I know, but where's that? Like, name some places.
Central African
Ecuador.
Republic?
No.
Kiribati?
No. Never been to any of those.
Ecuador?
No, not been there. Okay. What's so good about phosphate, people? Why did they have wars over it?
Phosphorus was a highly volatile element, so I don't really know, but I would make an assumption that it's used in weapons. And phosphate is also like a nitrate, isn't it? So it's a fertilizer.
Do you mean like chemical weapons?
No, it's like nitrate, so it'll have quite a lot of energy in it. So when you burn it, it will burn with a real intense heat, so it can be used for weapons, phosphorus bombs.
And what is phosphorus?
Well, it's a chemical element.
A metal or a rock or a...
It's a solid. It's a non-metal. I don't know whether you sometimes see in the experiments, but they get like an enormous spherical flask and then put a little bit of, I think it's oxygen in the flask, and then put a little bit of phosphorus in, and it lights up with an incredibly bright white light.
Oh wow! So if you put loads of that in a shell and throw it at somebody, it'll kill them.
It burns really hot, I think. Is that
Yes,
right?
it wouldn't. It burns incredibly hot. Yes.
Okay. Well, what's in it that burns so much?
Bird shit.
So if I set light to some bird shit, I would go up in flames. What do you mean? Why is bird shit so flammable?
Because it contains phosphorus.
Fair enough. Paul, you ever collected stamps?
No, I've never been a philatelist.
No?
It seems quite a boring thing. If you're going to collect something, you might as well collect coins, something that's got an intrinsic value.
Does that imply that you collect coins?
No, but I think I'd rather have a gold coin than a bit of paper.
True, yeah. Even a penny black? That's got to be worth more than a gold coin.
No,
penny black?
They're worthless.
They're worthless? I thought they were the most sought-after stamp.
No. There are so many of them produced, I think they go for a few pounds.
Oh, right.
Or a few tens of pounds. I think you need to go back to one of your previous countries. I think the British Guiana had a weird stamp that was printed incorrectly, and I think that was the famous one that sold for a lot of money in the past.
See, that's a common theme in the world of collecting, isn't it? That something like a misprint or an error, essentially, becomes really collectible because obviously people catch the error and correct it. So then suddenly these supposed errors actually become the most valuable things.
Yes, I think in coins you get things like called mule coins, which are when there was something wrong and it was like two heads or two tails, or the heads and the tails are rotated around. And I know in America you get things called starred notes, don't you, which are notes that have been printed to replace a note that got destroyed in the manufacturing process, and people sort of collect those.
And these are different to limited edition, aren't they? Where they're specifically
yes, because limited
to be
editions
different.
are planned, whereas these are unplanned.
Well, you might argue, given that we love a conspiracy here on History Happened Everywhere, that you might throw in a little broken one every now and then, get everybody excited.
Well, it's funny you should say that.
PR.
There was a company that did business with a lot of the Pacific Islands.
Yeah.
Stock in Trade was managing your philately business.
Yeah.
And they did exactly that. They did a load of fairly shady practices. And they eventually, it was quite scandalous, actually. So they were quite successful for a short period. And then they were found out, and it was a bit of a crash, and it was all a bit of a scandal. So be careful.
Yes, because there are a lot of the Polynesia, or the Pacific Islands, sort of concentrate on stamps and weird coins, don't they? I remember I was in the Pacific once, and they had triangular coins.
That seems like that would decimate your pocket.
Triangular coins. That's kind of cool, though. I like that.
They had rounded corners, but they weren't equidiameter ones like the 50p.
50p aren't triangle, Paul. I know you're supposed to be our resident expert, and I think I need to pick you up on this. The 50p is not a triangle.
No, it's not a triangle. It's a heptagon. But if you measure the diameter is constant. So it actually rolls.
It might surprise you to learn that I was interested in collecting stamps as a child.
I'm astonished.
Yeah.
Boring.
Hey, stop it. I thought it was fascinating, seeing different parts of the world and little images that they had on them. I thought it was interesting. Plus, I love a little collecting thing. I'll collect anything, me. Also, I found them in the back of a comic book. They're those adverts where you could buy like X-ray specs and sea monkeys and things like that. And there was a company that would sell you a bag of stamps. And so I bought a bag of stamps from this company, and they turned up, and sure enough, stamps from all over the world. And I thought, well, this is great, but this is just like, there's a lot of duplicates in here. And so I sorted them all out, and I put them in a book, and I thought, well, this is the start of my stamp collecting. So I ordered another bag from that company, thinking, well, I'll get more. And it was the same set of stamps.
I have to say that you bought something from the back of a comic book only at the point of complete disappointment. It took you 2 rounds to get there, but if you'd have gone for the X-ray specs, you'd have been straight in with disappointing, I think.
Well, maybe. You don't know. You didn't buy them. You could be looking at naked ladies right now. You don't know. Well, not right now. You'd be looking at me.
Oh, I regret buying these glasses.
Yeah. It just occurred to me that, once I'd got those stamps, actually, that was really my only input, because I didn't know anyone else. No one was sending me mail from other countries. There was no real avenue. There was no eBay then. I didn't know where I was going to get stamps from. So it sort of stopped.
Quixotic adventure. I shall collect stamps.
And then stopped.
I am done with stamps.
Did you ever see that? I think there were a couple of series of Ealing comedies in the 50s. I think one was called The Mouse That Roared.
I have seen that.
And I thought of that when you were talking about Kiribati. You know, this tiny, insignificant little dot of a country managing to play off the largest countries in the world, which I thought was absolutely brilliant.
At the age of 29.
At the age of 29, yes. Is he still alive?
I don't know. I was hoping you'd tell me.
Fact check, Charlie.
Fact check.
We'll fact check that one.
Hello, this is the voice of the internet. Iremia Tabwai is still alive and retains a position as politician in the Kiribati parliament. He recently celebrated his 71st birthday on the 16th of December 2020. Happy birthday, Iremia, from everyone at History Happened Everywhere. Thank you.
You should have got him on the call.
He'd probably have joined us.
You never know.
You never know. Well, we'll try that. Maybe we'll do that.
Drop him a line.
We'll send him a message. Why not? We'll see if he'll come on and talk to us. That'd be great.
Well, so you could see whether he'll sort of pay for us all to go over there.
Well, we'll entertain that at the end of that conversation. Maybe not lead with that.
So, question one.
Can
Will you
we
pay to take us to Kiribati?
Yeah.
After all we've done to promote your nation.
Exactly. Surely that's worth a first-class ticket each, even though you're struggling and economically poor. But, Paul, it's a good question, though. 29 years old. How would you have done at 29? Would you have run a country? Taken on the might of the empires?
I would like to think that I could, but obviously I wouldn't.
What makes him so special, then?
Well, it's probably not that special, but...
Well, we're now not getting those flights, so that was your opportunity to give us...
but, you know, it's a very small talent pool.
Oh, what? Because there's only so many people that living there?
Yes.
I see.
So what, there are about 110,000 now. There were probably fewer than 100,000 then.
Have you ever been on an atoll?
Yes, I have.
I was hoping for more than that.
Oh, sorry. One of the best holidays I've ever had, it was ages ago now, I'd love to go back, was I went to the Cook Islands in the Pacific, which are only about 1,000 miles away from Kiribati.
That's a hop, skip and a jump in Pacific terms, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
And, you know, the style of life was totally different. The quality of life seemed really high, although, you know, they didn't have much, but they always seemed incredibly happy. The people were all very pretty, and they all used to wear flowers in their hair. Just normally, it wasn't something for the tourists or anything. They just used to always used to wear flowers in their hair.
I feel like you've missed an opportunity for a completely different life of just saying, this is it, this is for me. Flowers in my hair, on the beach. Could have been a whole different Dersley.
No, it was just totally different. I just think, you know, these small countries, I have been up to other places, I won't mention them in the Pacific, that weren't as nice, but you know, that sort of place just seemed to be, you know, the Paradise Isles, you know, like Tahiti, where, you know, the sailors would refuse to leave because it was so good. And there was actually a story about there was an old-fashioned flying boat company called Teal.
Okay.
I can't remember. I don't know what the acronym was, but there was something. They used to fly from Wellington to Los Angeles, I think, over the Pacific, and they used to island hop because obviously they never had enough fuel, and they used to navigate by the stars. And this was even in the 50s.
Oh wow!
There was a time when there was a problem on the aeroplane, and so what the crew decided to do was to leave the passengers on the Cook Islands,
right,
whilst the crew just flew back to the nearest place where they could repair the plane and fly back. So they came back 4 days later, and the story, apocryphal no doubt, is that people said, "Oh, go away, we're enjoying it too much."
Yeah, I don't blame them.
I've got this vision of a plane setting out full of people, stopping at islands. Just each time there's fewer and fewer people getting back on board, and about 3 people get off the other end.
Yeah.
But the thing about the atoll, though, is it was triangular. and it was basically about 8 foot deep, the water inside the lagoon. So it was a 20 square mile swimming pool.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And warm as well, I imagine.
And warm, with lots of little fishes and octopuses or octopi around in the water.
You're making us cry here, Paul.
Oh, mate, my life seems terrible suddenly.
Yeah. I've got a bathtub. I could fill that with warm water and you could splash about in that if you like. It's the same thing.
Well, same in the sense that it's water.
Fair enough.
Very minimum sameness you could possibly have.
Yes,
There is
exactly.
water.
Right. Talking of water, Paul, you get a phone call from the leader of Kiribati and they say, Paul, we need your help. We're drowning over here.
Mm-hmm.
Our land is getting submerged. Help us fix it. What's your suggestions? What are you gonna offer them? How are you gonna get them out of this trouble?
Well, firstly, I need to criticise you.
Wait, what? That seems unfair.
Well,
Please
you
proceed.
You suggested that the sort of the Middle East solution about pumping sand up from the
Yeah.
that wouldn't work, of course, because they're tops of volcanoes, so the sand is a good couple of miles down, whereas in the Gulf the sand is 100 feet down at most.
Okay.
So that wouldn't really work.
Okay, so not that one. So what are you
But
proposing?
you need quite a lot of sand to sort of bridge a 2-mile gap.
Yeah, okay. What about you though? Like, what are your suggestions?
Ooh.
How are you going to fix it? Give them some stilts?
Bit of scaffolding.
I suppose you could move them over a hydrothermal vent that would push the islands up a bit,
What
which is how they formed in the first place, of course.
move the islands?
Over a hydrothermal vent like Hawaii, so the lava comes out and lifts the islands up.
Okay.
But of course, that's a totally unfeasible solution.
So what do you suggest then? Do you think the international community should support them and save the Kiribati? Or do you think it's one of those things, well, that's just the product of the environment and we're going to have to move you?
Well, the first thing is it's incredibly sad that these situations would have to happen. And,
Yeah, of course.
we have to do things to mitigate this and try and stop it. But there's the situation if an asteroid were to hit the Arctic, for example, then nothing that we could do. It would release so much water that loads and loads of places would be flooded.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I should probably think economics would come into this, and there would be a pragmatic thing to say, well, there is a point where they need to be abandoned. Let's just hope that doesn't happen.
Well, of course, yeah.
I have a simple solution.
Oh, no.
If
if it's airbeds and they're just going to float on a...
No, it's much simpler than that, and it's proven to work. You may recall from our Sweden podcast, all you need is a 3-kilometre ice sheet pressing down on the islands for a few centuries. Then you pop your ice sheet off, and then they'll be rising about 8 millimetres a year, offsetting the rising in the sea levels. Everyone's happy.
Okay, that's probably as feasible as by moving them over a hydrothermal vent.
First, obtain 3-kilometre ice sheet.
And what are they going to do for the 3,000 years where there's a 3-kilometre ice sheet over the top of them?
I didn't say it was immediate. I'm looking to the long term.
Okay. I think what we agree here is that nobody's got a solution amongst the three of us as to how to save Kiribati.
I mean, if it did, I'd like to think one of us would have piped up before now.
Yeah, that's true. All right.
The only sort of semi-feasible thing I can think of is if you could put some sort of, like a big rubber ring around the islands.
And what, that would work like a dam holding the water back?
Well, and then increase the air pressure inside that over the island. And then that would the increased air pressure would lower the water.
Armbands.
So Paul's come up with a pretty sensible suggestion, and your response is armbands.
Correct.
It's the kind of thing that I would say. And even I didn't say it.
I just had a vision of island armbands to keep them floating.
I like the idea of pushing the water down. That sounds great. That's using your head.
But that happens all the time. Whenever it's higher pressure, it pushes down on the water. Okay, the water has to go somewhere, so
Other
you might
islands.
flood somewhere else.
You just said there were other less nice Pacific islands, so we'll just lose those ones.
Those ones are gone. They're done. We've saved Kiribati. Hooray! We're heroes. Paul, I feel like we've come to a point where we need a grade from you.
Just to remind you of the relentlessly fascinating and exciting and enduringly entertaining
Stop it.
Kiribati.
This is snivelling. You're embarrassing yourself.
Well, first of all, could you refrain from singing in the future?
Oh, you're really going to struggle with next week then.
I'd love it if your points go down because my singing in your episode.
I feel we stand or fall together, Ryan.
Well, okay.
To be serious, I enjoyed this episode.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear.
And you might want to close your ears, Ryan. I'd give it an A-.
Yes! E minus. No, it's on. Are we recording this?
No,
you better be recording this.
I turned it off.
If I listen to this back and it goes, I would give it an, and then your voice pitches up, B.
That might happen.
I think it would have been an A apart from the singing.
Well, can it not be a B because of the singing?
Stop trying to negotiate me down, man. Come on. You've already wrecked my chances with your terrible 80s tracks.
They were good 80s tracks. I had a call from a producer this week. I'm going on tour. We got the Christmas special next week. I wonder what I'll get for that.
Like a C, maybe.
Probably, yeah. Almost certainly a C. I got a D plus on the last one.
Well, shall we just forget the verdict next time? Then you've got a C.
Oh,
C minus.
Can't give him his paper pre-graded.
then you know
What's
you're
this
bad.
C on the top, sir? I just know how this is going to
just
end.
don't bother, and that's what you're going to get. All right, it's gone in. Well done, A minus. For Kiribati. Very good. It was a good one. I didn't enjoy it as much as Paul.
I love the resentment that's fostered by these supposedly fun podcasts. The furiously competitive podcast. History happened everywhere.
Very good. All right, Paul, thank you for joining us here on The Verdict.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, as always. And we'll see you next week.
Absolutely.
Very good. Peter,
Ryan,
well done on your grade.
thank you very much. I feel that having now been part of the recording for next week,
Yeah.
I think you're in with a chance of matching it.
All right. This has been History Happened Everywhere.
The verdict.
Thanks for listening to History Happened Everywhere. I'm Ryan and he's Pete. And if you want to get in touch with either of us, you can do that through hhepodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can use HHE Podcast in any of the usual social media.
That's right. And, if you did enjoy the show and you enjoy it, let's help spread the word, get more people coming, and you can do that by rating and reviewing at your podcast provider.
We'd love to hear what you think, as long as it's nice.
Yeah, please be nice.
Be nice.
We're very sensitive.
Okay, Paul, how do you get a pig to a hospital in an emergency?
A ambulance. Sorry, I just...